What's up YouTube, I'm Guy, and today on the channel I'm going to be reviewing something really cool. We're going to be checking out a Nomos Orion Neomatik, reference number 392. This watch is a pretty conservative dress style watch, I guess is the way that I would describe it, but it's very impressive, and I'm looking forward to sharing it here with you today. Before I begin, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to my friends over at Exquisite Timepieces. Exquisite Timepieces is a brick-and-mortar authorized dealer in my local area of Naples, Florida. They've been in business for over 20 years, and they were kind enough to loan me this watch. They're authorized dealers of dozens of brands, including some notable ones such as Omega, Grand Seiko, and of course Nomos. I cannot again thank them enough for loaning me this watch for review. If you guys are interested, I really do recommend you go over to their website, exquisitetimepieces.com, and take a look at both their new and pre-owned inventory. They have a ton of watches. Dress watches are kind of, I don't know, a guilty pleasure of mine. I call it a guilty pleasure because I don't really wear dress watches. I don't really dress up. But I really do admire them. I like them, I enjoy them. They just don't fit my everyday lifestyle the way that I would like. That said, I don't know if I would call this 100% a dress watch. This is a small watch. It's 36 millimeters in case diameter. This is a fairly conservative watch. Nomos is known for their minimalist, their simple, and very clean designs. And this fits the bill for sure when it comes to those styles of watches. It has somewhat of a, I don't know, I guess a Bauhaus theme or style would probably be the way to describe it. And I'll show you up close and here in a second when we jump over to the tabletop. But yeah, it's not a style of watch that I would necessarily wear all the time. Well, that is dress watches. But I think I could pull this off as a daily wear watch with a few caveats. Number one, because it's so small, it's probably a little bit delicate. I wouldn't want to go banging this around all the time. But I don't feel like it's strictly a black tie or really dressy dress watch. I think you could get away with it on daily wear in a relatively casual environment, certainly business, professional, or anything like that. So I would highly consider this watch, even for my own personal collection, despite the fact that it might be somewhat outside my comfort zone, that being, stainless steel sports watches primarily. There's a lot of stuff I didn't know about Nomos before I did this review. They were founded in 1990, so relatively a young brand. And in that time, they have really done some great things. When they started out, they were, of course, basing all of their watch movements on ETA mechanical movements. But in the mid-2000s, they started developing their own in-house movements, and now that's, I believe, what they use exclusively on all of their watches. That includes something on the order of about 13 different models in their product catalog, all of them somewhat similar, all of them kind of conservative, again, very simple and clean designs, but they do range in sizes. So while the watch that we're reviewing here today is a little bit on the small side at 36 millimeters, they even have smaller watches down to, I believe, 33 millimeters, all the way up to approaching, and I think maybe even exceeding in a couple of instances, 40 to 41 millimeters. A very nice catalog of products to choose from. So definitely hop over to their website and take a look at all of them. I really enjoyed learning a bit about everything that they're offering right now. Now around 2014, 2015, somewhere in that ballpark, they came out with the caliber DUW 3001, I believe, which is the movement that's used in this watch. It is an ultra thin automatic movement, and when we dive over to the tabletop, you're going to see what I'm talking about when I say ultra thin. We're talking about an automatic watch that comes in at about 8 to 8.5 millimeters in thickness. Very, very impressive. They created their own escapement, which they call the Nomos swing system, I believe. Technically speaking, I don't know a whole heck of a lot about that escapement, but nonetheless that they're doing in-house movements, that they've designed their own escapement system is definitely really impressive. Well, enough with the chit-chat. Let's hop over to the tabletop. Let's take a close look at this watch, and then we'll come back over here and I'll finish out the review with my final thoughts. Alright guys, here we have it, the Nomos Orion Neomatik reference 392. First thing to talk about, let's get it out of the way right now. The MSRP, the suggested retail price on this watch is $3,580 in the United States. Certainly not a small amount of money. The reason I want to talk about that first is because Nomos has a number of other models in their catalog that come in at a price point of between $2,000 and $2,400 or thereabouts that are extremely similar to this watch. Now, those watches don't have this ultra-thin automatic, what they call the Neomatik movement, the DUW 3001. That's the reference or the caliber of the movement. The more affordable watches in their catalog have a mechanical movement. It's also in-house. I believe it's called the Alpha movement. A good movement in its own right, but the reason you're going to be looking at $1,000 or so in price difference is primarily going to be because of this very thin automatic movement. Let's go ahead and talk about that movement a little bit as we get started here. The DUW 3001, and generally I don't start my videos with reviewing the movement of a watch. I talk about the specs, but I want to get the movement out of the way because it's actually pretty cool. 27 joule movement. It is bidirectional automatic winding, so of course it's going to power itself up on your wrist as you're wearing it in your daily lives. 43-hour power reserve. It does have hand winding and hacking. As you'll notice, it doesn't have a central seconds hand. You can see on the dial at the 6 o'clock position you have a sub-seconds or sub-dial for the active running seconds. This watch runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour, and it's kind of funny, in all of the literature about this watch, they never really published that information. The reason I found out was because I threw it on my time grapher to see what kind of accuracy it was keeping, at least in a couple of different positions. My time grapher automatically sensed that this was running at 21,600. A lot of guys complain about watches that don't run at 28,800. In this case, though, it's not a problem at all. Because that subdial for the seconds is so small, you don't notice the somewhat, I guess we would describe it as choppy, the manner at which the seconds hand sweeps, if you will. On a central seconds hand, it can look a little jittery or choppy, but when it's on a small subdial like this, you don't notice it. Now, another reason why that's a plus side is because typically speaking, watches that run at 21,600 require less service. They're more reliable, they're more dependable. So I do actually look at that as a plus side. Interesting information about this new movement, which was designed in, I want to say 2014 or thereabouts. It is super thin. Let's just take a look at the profile of the watch case. The watch itself is 8.5 millimeters thick. The movement is only 3.2 millimeters, so that's outstanding. Now this watch does have a display case back. Let's take a look at the movement in this case back. I'm going to zoom the camera in a little bit. This is a very attractive movement. Now the first thing to note about it, look at the balance wheel. You can see that it is supported by a fixed balance bridge. That's, I mean, a nice feature to have in your movement. Instead of having just a balance cock, which is sort of like a half bridge, this one goes all the way across. It is screwed into place securely. That's going to aid in your precision and reliability. This movement is beautifully decorated, as you're probably seeing. It has Côte de Genève is the way that you might describe it, and a perlage underneath the balance wheel there, if you can see that, those little concentric circles. But as I understand it, in Germany, because this is a German-made watch, it's called Glashütte ribbing. I'm probably pronouncing the name of Glashütte incorrectly. And they call the perlaging Nomos perlage. We have a bunch of very nice blued screws. You can see the branding on the rotor. It's a skeletonized rotor in a gold font, Nomos Glashütte Deutsch. I'm not German, so I'm butchering that. Down at the very bottom there, you can probably see the DUW 3001, the reference for this caliber movement. Very, very nicely done, though. I mean, this is a luxury decorated movement, of course, without a doubt. The regulation system on the balance wheel is a little bit different than you might be used to. You can see that there's a little screw there, maybe, to the right of that lever coming off the central portion of the balance wheel. That's how your fine regulation is adjusted, and I did throw this on my time grapher. I'll bring in some video. No adjusting necessary. This thing was keeping excellent time in several positions. In the dial up position that I filmed, it was between +2 and +3 seconds over a relatively long test. I think I tested it for a few minutes. I don't know the lift angle of this movement, so I'm not exactly 100% sure if my amplitude reading is correct, but that is a very good amplitude and it's probably in the correct ballpark. And if you look at the trace line, it's a very clean, very consistent trace line with no jitter, no anomalies, nothing to make us believe that there's anything wrong happening inside of this movement. Let's talk about the overall dimensions of this watch. We have a case diameter of 36 millimeters, which is just a real crowd pleaser in my opinion. A lot of people for what seems like years have been asking, where's the smaller watches? Where's the smaller watches? Well, here's a smaller watch. It has a lug width of 18 millimeters where the strap attaches to the body of the case. That is okay, but I honestly prefer 20 millimeter lugs, and we'll discuss that a little bit more as I come in closer and kind of analyze the case design here. A thickness, as I think I previously mentioned, only 8.5 millimeters thick. This is wafer thin, is the best way to describe it. And a lug-to-lug from the extremity of one side to the other of the case here, 45 millimeters. So considering it's a 36 millimeter case, the overall lug-to-lug width from edge to edge, maybe just a hair bigger than average. And the why I'm letting you know that is because this does not wear like a small watch. It does not feel undersized on my 6 3/4 wrist whatsoever. Let's talk about this case. It's an attractive case. The finishing is very well done. I'll come in here and kind of show you that high polish. Probably see me and my camera there in the background. It's a little bit dark on my screen. I'm not sure if my exposure is doing very well. Perhaps because I have this white background. Let me move that out of the way and see if it helps. There we go. Sans white background. It definitely can get a sense of the overall quality and finishing of this case. Look at all of the edges as the lugs come off of the case. Very, very clean, very crisp, very deliberate where the lug joins the case. You see just very nice lines. It's very well thought out. It's very well designed. It's simple, for sure. It's a very simple case design, but executed exquisitely would be the way that I would describe it. Interestingly, as you've probably noticed, we do have holes in the lugs or perforations. I don't know, it's a little kind of atypical for a dress watch, and one of the reasons why I wouldn't say that this serves only the duty of a dress watch. Certainly not a sports watch by any stretch of the imagination, but a casual everyday wear watch. Aside from the fact that it feels slightly delicate, I would say yes, for sure, it serves the function of more than purely a dress watch. The lugs themselves are a little bit on the long side and they taper down to a very slender wedge, if you will, and the strap joins in at the lugs here at 18 millimeters. I really wish that they would have went with 20 millimeter lugs. I think that that would have worked a little bit better. Not by making the lugs a millimeter thinner on each side, but instead moving the whole lug over to the right and to the left by 1 millimeter each, and giving us a slightly thicker strap. I think that would aid in making it even less of a dress-only style watch. They could, maybe slightly beef up the lugs and then shave down the middle, however you want to look at it. They could give us a 20 millimeter strap, though. That, I think, would be my preference. This is, of course, extremely wearable, even at the 18 millimeter strap size or lug width. I'm not complaining about it too much. It's just, in my experience, I prefer 20 millimeter straps and lug widths, generally speaking. On the right-hand side of the case, more of the same, that extremely nice, high-polished finishing. We have a signed crown. You can see Nomos signed crown there. The crown is small, but not entirely difficult to manipulate. Not so small as to be a problem, for sure. Also a high polish. The case back, which we looked at, is a display case back, of course, and it is a sapphire crystal display case back. The crystal has an ever so slight dome, which maybe you'll be able to pick up there. Not certainly an aggressive domed case back, but nonetheless a very slight domed. which matches up basically with that crystal on the face of the watch. Also a nice sapphire, slightly domed or convex crystal. Very well done. I do not believe there's any AR coating, but in my experience, white or silver dial watches, such as this one, don't really need AR coating because you're not having a black high gloss dial reflect light right back into the crystal. Not a problem at all if it doesn't have AR coating, and again, I don't believe it does. This is, of course, a hand winding and hacking movement, and the winding of the crown to charge up the movement, it feels great. Again, this crown is a little bit on the small side, but manipulation of it is not good. Hand winding is very, very smooth. There's only one position, and pulling the crown out to that first position does hack the movement, as you can see there. Because it's so small, you can see I struggled just a little bit to get the crown pulled out, but basically, very usable and straightforward. You would expect that a crown on a watch this side would be a little bit subdued or undersized to fit in with the overall design, the theme, the style, so it's excusable for sure. The dial on this watch is very simple, very clean, but very handsome. You have applied markers, stick-style markers for each of the hour positions, and if I can get in here nice and close, I'll try to give you a good look at them. They are faceted and highly polished on each facet. The dial itself is not quite white, but nor would I describe it as silver. There's somewhat of a granular feel to it. I don't know if it'll show up on camera very well. A very, very attractive dial, though. I think it's a great color combination with the seconds or minute markers printed on the dial outboard of those hour indexes or indices. The applied stick markers, you can see there's blue 5, 10, 15, 20 going around the entirety of the dial. Matches up with that silvery dial with that granular texture. Of course, we have the Nomos Glashute with Neomatik printed in red as a little bit of an accent that matches up with the sub-seconds second hand very, very nicely. Let's get even closer if we can and look at that sub-seconds dial. You can see that it has a series of concentric radial circles in there and then just printed markers for each 5-second position. It's typical inset into the dial, but it's executed very, very well. It looks great. The handset is a very thin pencil style handset, extremely thin, but still very legible. I have no problem reading this watch at all in decent lighting, and of course low lighting. We have no luminescence whatsoever, so it's not a low light watch by any stretch of the imagination. I believe the handset is a black anodized. I forget the what they said. It's not a blued, but yeah, maybe it was anodized. I forget the technology they used to get that somewhat glossy finish on those black pencil style handsets. Because this is a very minimalist, very, very simple, very clean design. It all works really well. I mean, you got these very thin markers. You have the very thin handset. A nice seconds or minute track outboard of those markers at each hour mark. Overall, it's really a very great presentation. I, again, don't know if I would classify this strictly as a dress watch. I think it could serve double duty for a lot of different occasions. The strap and buckle on this watch are very nicely done. As we can see on the back side, lined Nomos. Over on this side, we can see genuine Horween shell cordovan. A shell cordovan strap, or leather in general, is very, very nice, high-quality leather. You're talking about a process to tan and process and produce this leather taking on the order of 6 months, according to Horween's website. So this is not a simple material to produce, and the final product is outstanding. A little bit glossy, yes, as you can see as it shines through my studio lighting here, but not shiny. It's just the right level of glossiness. The buckle, it's a fairly standard pin or tang style buckle with the exception of this extra loop on the rear side in order to secure your strap with a single floating leather keeper. Very nicely done. The inner liner is maybe the only slight complaint that I have. You can see that the liner, the edge of it, it's not super clean. Usually what I would see on a leather strap is that the leather from the top side of the strap at the end is what's called skived. It's like sliced very, very thinly, and then it wraps around and it covers the liner leather here, and then it would be glued or stitched down. So you don't see this somewhat, honestly, unsightly seam. It's not a deal breaker. It's not a big deal at all. It's just, at this almost $3,600 price point, I wouldn't think that you would see that. Again, I'm nitpicking. I'm trying to find, little things that maybe I would improve if I could. But overall, the strap itself is outstanding. Stitching is not any sort of contrast. It's just black stitching, matches up with the black leather. Very well done on both sides. Absolutely nothing wrong with the stitching. And then the holes, very simple, straightforward. What you would expect for a leather strap of this quality. I'll go ahead and I will throw the Nomos Orion on my wrist, give you guys a wrist shot, give you an idea of what a 36mm wristwatch looks like on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. So go ahead and give me just 1 second to strap this on. Alright guys, there we have the 36mm diameter Nomos Orion on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. I love the fit. I think that it's just about perfect, and it makes me want more 36mm watches, to be perfectly honest. Very, very thin. Kind of can't get really a good angle to show you the thinness on the wrist, but suffice to say at 8.5 millimeters of thickness, and this is going to wear low to the wrist. It's going to slide under absolutely any dress shirt, long sleeve dress shirt that you could, throw at it, I guess, for lack of a better word. The fit, the overall feel of it, the strap, everything, it's executed great. The buckle on the strap side, again, it has that little extra loop on the rear side of the stainless steel buckle to help secure that tail end of your strap. I've got plenty of adjustment, if my wrist were a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger. So you definitely could get this in probably down to 6 inches or up to, for sure, 7.5, maybe 8, and not have any problems, though I'm guessing a lot of you guys with 8-inch wrists are not looking for 36mm watches. Nevertheless, fits great, wears great. Blown away by this little watch, to be perfectly honest. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed checking out this Nomos Orion Neomatik reference 392. I really do like this watch. I think that it's a home run. I'm super impressed with it. I'm going to go back over to the studio view, close out this review with my final thoughts, talk about a couple of pros and cons for this watch, because there's a few, so stick with me for a couple of more minutes. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that presentation of the Nomos Orion Neomatik, reference 392. Very cool watch. Again, kind of a dress watch, but I think that it would work in a relatively casual daily wear environment, certainly business professional, without a doubt. I wouldn't want to go beating this watch around. It's probably going to be a little bit on the delicate side, and I guess that will lead me into my discussion on the pros and cons of this watch. Pros of this watch, obviously the design. I think that it's stunning. It's going to be subjective, of course. You may agree, you may disagree, but I think that it's a really cool, classic design. Very minimalist, very clean. It is definitely under the radar. It's not obtrusive or loud. I really, really dig that. I think that they, for the majority of the designs of their watch, have hit a lot of home runs, and this one is no exception. A big pro for this is the thinness. At 8.5 millimeters thick, outstanding. I don't know of a whole lot of watches at this price point that come in at that or thinner. Off the top of my head, I certainly don't know. I'm sure you guys will let me know down in the comments. I would imagine that under $4,000 there are some other options, but that this is so low profile really is an impressive feat of horology and engineering. The in-house movement, that's another thing here that is a pro in my book. That DUW3001, I showed you some video of it running on my time grapher. A very accurate movement. I think that the fact that they're making not only their own in-house movements, but their own escapement designs is really cool. For the watch nerd in us, that's kind of something that attracts us to these brands, I think. At least for me, because I'm really into the idea of accuracy. I'm into the idea of mechanical engineering and those, oh, I don't know how I would describe it, feats of engineering, I guess. All of the things that they've done here with this movement certainly impress. Some cons about this watch. There's a few. Number one, I think I'll probably start with the strap I pointed out in the tabletop. Just the finishing on the underside. I don't know, it's not absolutely perfect. I'm being super nitpicky here, of course. But, you know, I felt like they could have, at this price point, probably done slightly better in joining up the seams of the liner on the back to the fold over from the front side of that Cordovan shell Cordovan leather. Very, very minor, very, very nitpicky, but you know, there's not really a lot of bad things to say about that watch. The lug width, 18 millimeters, is not my favorite size for straps, for lugs. It feels a little bit delicate on my wrist. I prefer 20. We talked about that in the tabletop. I pointed out my ideas of expanding out the lugs, not making them thinner to accommodate a 20 millimeter strap, but just kind of moving them out a little bit wider. That would be the ideal for me, I think. Of course, I would have to see it, and they're probably not going to offer to make a prototype design to get my stamp of approval. I wish they would, though. But I'm guessing that that would be another tiny little nitpick if I had to, again, come up with some cons about this watch. The price, that's potentially a negative at $3,500 plus. For me, since this isn't the type of watch that I would probably typically buy, the price is a little high. For you, that might be not a big deal. You might say, I could see wearing this watch all the time, every day. I'll get tons of use out of it. The price is reasonable, particularly when we're talking about the quality and that in-house movement. I mean, that's where your money's going. The fact that they have very similar style models in a mechanical hand wind version for just a hair above $2,000, between $2,000 and $2,400, makes this somewhat of a tougher pill to swallow at $3,500. I understand the majority of that money is going into the movement because it's a new movement, relatively speaking. It's an automatic movement. They've done a lot of really cool things there in terms of the thinness, in terms of the precision. So I think it's not entirely unwarranted. Again, it's just a slightly tough pill to swallow for me. Alright guys, that is my review of the Nomos Orion Neomatik, reference 392. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked checking out this watch with me. I had a lot of fun sharing it with you. Again, big thank you to the guys over at Exquisite Timepieces, my local authorized dealer that has given me this watch on loan. Please do go to exquisitetimepieces.com, check out what they have both in terms of new and pre-owned inventory, and if you happen to talk to Evan over there, let him know that you heard about their business from Guy. I would appreciate that. Hopefully they'll continue loaning me watches in the future. As always, thanks for tuning in. If you want to help support the channel, there's a few things that you can do down in the description of this video and every video that I produce. You will find a list of ways that you can help me out. First of all, go follow me over on my social media accounts, be it Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. I don't inundate you with content over there, but you'll get updates about what's coming and notifications about when I release new content, so it's a good idea to follow me over there. You could also support me on Patreon. I've got a few of you guys over there helping me out every month, and I truly appreciate that, but I'd love to have more of you helping support on Patreon. If you can do it, I would honestly appreciate it very much. Finally, if you like the products that I review, generally I try to put links to them on Amazon using my affiliate account. If you purchase them or anything else that I have reviewed in the past, I get a small commission. Those commissions do add up. I really do appreciate all you guys that have taken the time to click on my links before you do your shopping on Amazon. Well, that's going to wrap this review for today. I appreciate you tuning in. We'll be back later this week with another video, so stay tuned. Alright guys, bye now.